All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. That way we can hopefully remain on time. My name is Lauren, and I am the membership program manager with the societies, ASA, CSA, and SSSA. And so I'm sure you've seen the emails come through for me and everything for awards and committees. And so I am your staff contact for getting through the awards process, voting, and also the committees that make up the voting for our fellows. So I wanted to introduce quickly our 2022 fellows chairs. So for ASA,
can we, Lauren, just a minute. Yep. I think we've got some background noise from, or just conversations going on. You can mute. Wonderful.
Thank you all. So ASA representing is Jeffrey Vilanek, and he is our 2022 chair for the ASA Fellows Committee. For CSA, it's PV Vera Prasad, and SSSA is April Ullery. So if you would like to introduce yourself, say a few words, we can open that up for you as well.
Thanks, Lauren. I'll go first. Welcome, everyone. Jeff Vilanek, Purdue University. I just want to thank everyone for participating in this very, very important process. Selection of fellows is a critically important recognition, one that is important to the members, but also to the societies. Recognizing the best among the best is something that we take very seriously in the organization, and we need your help. And so we appreciate your involvement in this process. The one thing I would ask, at least of the ASA members who are on the committee that will be working with me, is give really serious consideration to the breadth of what it means to earn fellow in the societies. Think hard about that. In the past, it's been sort of a research, academic-oriented experience, and we've tried to move the evaluations from that and the applications from that to maybe a broader array of experiences, including more industrial and other participants. Also give hard thought, serious thought to how we make sure we recognize underrepresented groups who oftentimes aren't selected as fellow. And so please be mindful of that. We're trying to, in terms of DEI, be fair, to honor these people, but also bring them along as well in the society recognition program. So with that, Lauren, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Var, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Larry. My name is Vera Prasad. I'm with the Crop Science Society of America, and I also share the same sentiments that Jeff talked about. I think, first of all, I want to thank each one of you for being actively participating in this committee to help not only nominate and also screening it appropriately. But as Jeff mentioned, I think we really need to think about how each of the candidates have been helping our societies, not only from research, teaching, and extension, but also from leadership and also private sector engagement and a few other organizational. So I think we should really give due consideration to the DEI initiatives, which we have been thinking about, not only in terms of gender, but also in terms of geographic area and also the institutional representation and everything. I will look forward to working with each one of you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. And then April, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. April Ullery from New Mexico State University. Thank you so much, Jeff and Vera, for your wonderful comments. I agree with them all entirely. And we do need to be aware that this is a huge and important honor. And it's wonderful that we can serve our members in this way. So just remember that our members are not only academics or only representing one discipline or anything like that. So don't fall into the trap of just voting for your favorite discipline or university or something like that. These are all amazing applications that we'll be reviewing, and I'm so honored to be doing it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, April. And then Susan, did you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. I'm Susan Chapman. I'm the Director of Member Services. So I work with Lauren, excuse me, to oversee all of the awards programs. And thank you all so much for being involved with this. It does take some time, but as the past presidents have all stated, it's such an important endeavor.
Excellent, thank you. And I think with that, I'm going to move right into the process. So as you know, we do have a little bit different look to the Fellows Awards this year with the award validation with the points, which will hopefully help you all when selecting your candidates to move forward through the first round and then also the second round, ensuring that those nominations are complete for submission. So that is why the deadline is a little bit later this year, just giving our nominees a chance to work through the system. It does take a little bit more time with the validation and the scoring, as I'm sure some of you may have heard. It's a little bit more of a process this year. So thank you very much for your patience with this and adhering to those deadlines as well. So without having the nominations closed yet, I do not have specific numbers for moving forward into the voting process with the deadline being tomorrow. So I am using information from past years in this slideshow to give examples and what the pages are going to look like. So I wasn't able to go in this year to the current nominations. So with that being said, I'm going to roll into what will look like once nominations close tomorrow. So within that process, the nominations will be turned over to committee chairs to open voting for the first round once an internal review is complete next week. So you can expect an email from, the chairs can expect an email from me next week once we are able to make sure everything's closed, submitted, complete. And with that being said, the first round of voting will be selecting 2 times the number of recipients to move forward through the voting round for the first part of this. So for ASA, that's 22 people. For CSA, that's 16. And SSA, that is 10. And with that email to the chairs, this is an example of what the page will look like. And the chairs will then be able to log in and set dates for the first round of voting, which is typically within 2 weeks. And I will be available to work closely with them to monitor the status of the committee votes, the members that have been able to vote, if there's any issues with the first round, and the ranking or the validation that goes through with that on the online system. So this is an example of that page. And so from there, once the committee set the dates, our committee members will then receive an email from the system with the link provided to go in and review the nominations, be able to download the offline ballot, and then also the rubric that we have, that the committees have put together cumulatively for helping scoring that system. So this is what that will look like for the committee members. This is a preview of the page, and the voting rubric will be hyperlinked and available for download, and then also the instructions on the page. So I will pull up here as well, just kind of an example of what that will look like. So again, this is last year, and here is the top of the page that the committee members will be able to view. And we do have guides built in to the online system in case the rubric is not very helpful. If you'd like to do it online, this is kind of a guide as well. I did want to note that for each section, there are points allocated that you can use. We also have the 0 point allocation for certain career role sections. If the nominees don't have strengths in that area, they can give that a 0 annotation as well. And then moving down the line for that, along with the summary and then the references. And then we are choosing not to go forward on this page because of previous nominations. We'd like to keep those just hidden. Don't want to give away names and things like that. But as a committee member, you will be able to scroll down and then view the voting online, and then also view each nomination that will be hyperlinked in the system. So you'll be able to click on each nomination, and if you choose, you can save it to view it later. You can view it online. And then this page also at the bottom of it has the option to download the offline copy of the ballot, which is exactly, here, let me pull up. So this is what it's going to look like. And the nominees will be included. So it'll be the nominee name, who it was nominated by, and then the option for entering your points offline. It comes in an Excel spreadsheet. So this is something that you could download, work on when you have time within that 2-week period of the first round of voting. So you don't have to do it all in one sitting. It's not something that you have to sit down and spend the entire day on if you don't have time. You can download this, enter in your notes, enter in your points. Maybe there's things that stand out to you each time you log in. Those are things that can be annotated in this offline ballot. But I do want to very, very much emphasize that the points that you enter on the offline ballot still need to be uploaded onto the online system here. So that is this page. They do not translate over, unfortunately. We don't have an upload option at this point. So this is something that you can work on it offline, and then when you have it complete for the first round of voting, go ahead and log into the system again, enter everything in, and then at that point, you're going to want to click submit. And we have a note in here that once you submit your votes, we cannot go back and change them. That is just how the system is built. But we do have the option of saving. So if you're not ready to submit and you want to work on this online, you still have that option to click save. And then those votes will be held in the system at any point.
Lauren, I have a question.
Yes.
So when they first log in and they'll see the ballot, right? Maybe
Yes.
if they want to work on the offline ballot, the first thing they should do is scroll to the bottom of that page and click download offline copy of ballot so they can get that on their computer.
Yes, absolutely. And that is savable, editable, and all of that. So that is the easiest step I think that we have in the whole system. Yeah.
Right. So that, and when they download that offline copy, it will have all of the names. So the system actually creates that specifically for whichever fellows committee that they're part of, right? It'll have all of the fellow nominations. Are those hyperlinks in the Excel file, or do they need to have the online one open when they're actually working on reviewing the nominations?
Yes, and that was where I had mentioned that the online system does have those hyperlinks. The offline ballot does not. So there is not a link to the offline ballot to the online ballot at all. There is no connection between the two. That offline ballot is just a file that lists the names and then also the points that are able to be then entered in online. So in order to view the nominations themselves, you do have to be logged in, but that is something that you can view them and then save them as a PDF if you will be traveling, or if there's any kind of situation that you would like to view those offline after you're able to go in and log into the system at the first point.
Okay. And one more question.
Yes.
I think with the offline copy of the ballot, there isn't a column for comments, but if you want to keep comments, you can certainly modify that offline ballot because it's only for your use, right?
Absolutely. So this is something that is strictly for help as a tool, similar to the rubric. You can use the rubric also to enter in points, although it is PDF, you can put in text if you'd like to do that too. But this is not something that anyone else will have available to them. Like you said, there's no way to upload it in the system. So that is strictly as a tool for our committee members to be able to use moving forward.
Okay. And people might want to make comments for each of the nominees because there is a second round of voting. And I've heard in the past that it's helpful to be able to go back and reference this ballot and any comments you have when they're doing the second round.
Yes, and there is an option. And this is something that I am unable to show at this point, again, because nominations are still open. But there is an option to go in as a committee member after the first round of voting has closed to review your scores from the first round. I am happy to help with our committee members who would like to do that if they have any issues or questions with that moving into the second round of voting. And like I said, unfortunately, I just can't show it right now with nominations still being open. I did also want to note on here that we are unable to program this spreadsheet to put in totals, but that is something that you can sum up your totals from each nominee in order to enter in the strict amount of points that you would like, and just double check that as a reference for the second round, if that's something that you would like to do as a committee member. Okay, any questions at this point? Feel free to put them in the chat, raise your hand, yell at me. Okay, sounds great. I'm going to move forward then. So this is our first round. I did include a link to that rubric just in case there's any issues with it or confusion. I do intend on sending the slide deck along with the recording to all committee members just as a reference, like I mentioned in the beginning. Okay, so after this first round of voting, then we're going to move into second round of voting. And this is where you're going to see the actual totals of the recipients of fellows for 2022. So for round 2, ASA will go ahead.
Sorry, can we just back up because we do have one question in the chat.
Absolutely.
The question is there a way to indicate that a nomination is not sufficient? And I think they would do that with the points, right?
Yes, I would give that point value 0 and just enter that into the system that way, because that will drop that nomination down to the bottom of the pool of nominations. If there's anything in there that just doesn't quite add up or whatever makes that nomination incomplete and not applicable to move forward, I would just give that a 0 rank or 0 score, because then the lowest scores will be weeded out at the bottom. Okay. And I did want to note too, all scores are accumulated for each individual. So committee members in the first round will enter in their scores. The system automatically tallies those scores when they're submitted, and then presents those to the past presidents, the chairs, when the chairs go in to select the first round of winners. So the system very intuitively adds those up. So there's no manual work that needs to be done once those scores are submitted. Anything else? Okay.
Lauren, I think these numbers here also is showing 10, and the first slide when you showed 2x the number, that was also showing 10. I was just worried about the first slide when you said SSSA is 10, where is 2x, but like 2 times the number. If you go back to the first slide when you're showing the allocation. Yeah. Okay. So that
is my mistake. I do have my numbers noted here that it is 10.
Yeah, I know generally 10 awarded. So basically we'll be looking for 20 ranking for the first one.
Yeah, and that is built into the system. This was just added for a reference. So thank you for catching that.
Perfect.
Wow, I'm so glad you said something, because I thought, man, did we lose all of our members in 1 year or something? That's ridiculous.
You know, April, I was thinking that. I said, how did we lose like so many? I was just going down the side, and how many of the fellows we awarded last year, I was checking.
Thank you for catching that.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so Soils has 10 fellows that they can select in the final round. So the first round, there will be 20. Second round will be 10. So with that being said, when you're entering in for the second round of voting, once the first round closes, the chairs will review, select the winners from the first round. Committee members will then receive another email from the system noting the second round of voting dates and times, which again is usually about a 2-week period, maybe 10 days, a little bit less for this round, because scoring will not have to be as comprehensive as the first round. So they will then go in, committee members will then go in and select 1 through 11 through those that have made it on. And I will note that it is possible.
For ASA. For ASA.
For ASA 11. It is possible that maybe your top 22 selections from the first round did not make it on to the second round. So that is, again, a good reason to keep notes, your offline rubric handy or anything like that, or go back and review your selections to see maybe where your points had lied with the other nominations that didn't meet that 22 nomination cutoff for ASA, 8, 16 for CSA, or 20 for soils. So that is helpful for the second round of voting, just to kind of note in where some of the deficiencies might have been or some of the advantages for certain nominations. Again, I'll be working very closely with the chairs to make sure that the first round of voting, we're going to get as many people as possible, because if you don't vote in the first round, you cannot vote in the second round. The system will not allow you to carry over if you weren't able to complete your submission, not just save, but submission of those points for the first round of voting. Okay, so here is an example of what the rank page will look like in the voting. So you'll be able to rank 1 through 11, 1 through 8, 1 through 10, and then anyone outside of that points, because you'll have a double number. So for ASA, there'll be 22 for you to rank in the second round. Anything outside of that 11 points or 11 rank will receive a 12. So you don't have to worry about ranking outside of 12. You just have to worry about ranking 1 through 11 for ASA, 1 through 8 for crops, and then 1 through 10 for soils. And again, I did want to note on here that while we do have a save option for the second round as well, you will want to ensure that your votes are submitted and completed for the second round of voting before the deadline. And I think that is the gist. Is there any questions at this point with the ranking round? Okay, I did want to include also in the slide deck are links directly to the online system. So here, this link is available if for whatever reason the voting link doesn't work in the email or anything like that. It is the awards committee page, and that's where you'll view your committee term, be able to go on and vote, etc.
And you'll need to be logged in, right? And when you log in, you'll actually see what committee, or if you're part of more than one awards committee, it'll have those and what the status is for each of those.
And the status of your voting. So if you have your votes saved, it'll show as saved. If your votes are submitted, it will then black out with the date, like it does with the nominations themselves.
So this is all online voting. There's no time when the committee actually discusses any of the nominees, right?
That's actually a great point. So it is at your discretion, April. So the chairs do have the ability to, or the option to set a meeting. I'm happy to assist if there's a Zoom meeting that you'd like to set up, if you need any assistance from me with that as well. It is at the discretion of the committee chair. Within the first, I would say the first ranking round would be more appropriate. But if you would like to have two, it's certainly an option to set a meeting and talk as a committee about the nominations, if that's something that you feel would be very helpful as a committee to sit down and look at the nominations together.
Okay, thanks. Two things that I'd like to mention. One, I'm a little bit curious about the statement, the question that was asked earlier about what if an application is insufficient. So what exactly would make you think that, I mean, because Lauren, aren't you all going through each application right now and making sure that they're complete and what, I don't know what I'm trying to say here other than.
No, yeah, I understand. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the system automatically, not automatically, I shouldn't say that. The system does its best to validate the sections. So if there is a section that is, say, the career role sections, that's a new thing this year where everything has to have 50 points. It will not be accepted. The nomination will not be allowed to be submitted if it does not reach 50 points as an allocation. So that is a very new thing this year. In past years, it was more of an option to put in 60 points, put in 70 points, put in 0 points because there was no validation behind it. So that is hopefully sidelining part of the problem, but there are other sections in there that if something is written in the description box, then it may not be complete. Or if it's 2 sentences rather than like 4,500 characters, which most of the sections are, that would disqualify that section for points and make it inapplicable because it's not necessarily complete. But the system won't catch if it has only 10 characters or if it has 45 characters. The validation for those points is the allotment. So if it goes over 4,500, then it's not allowed to be submitted. But as long as it's under 4,500 points or 4,500 characters, excuse me, you are able to then submit. So there are only certain things that we can check, and there's only so many nominations that I can look at and help with.
Sure.
To be able to get them submitted. So if there's something that is simply not complete, but it started and all of the other points match up, then it is allowed to be submitted. Same with the reference letters. It's required that they have to have 3 reference letters. If the reference letter is for some reason not complete, only 1 page, etc., there's not much that I can do about it after the fact. Especially once voting periods are open. So nothing can be changed in the system once a voting period has been set. But I'm here to do my best until 4 p.m. tomorrow.
No, I know you're great.
I will note for our committee members and chairs, the preview option for the reference letters did not hold this year during the duration of the nomination period. So previews of the reference letters will not be available. They will need to be downloaded to be viewed. I'm not sure if that was a requirement in the past, but it is a requirement this year. In order to read a reference letter, it needs to be downloaded. So I will note that as well. In the past, we've had it where you can just view it on the page, and that feature is not functional at this point.
Okay.
So, excuse me, April, this is Mary Beth
Yes,
Adams.
Mary Beth.
And I asked that question because, and afterwards, well, I ask it because sometimes there are nominations that really are not adequate, that it makes it just impossible, almost impossible to evaluate. And, you know, I always want to get input back to the nominator, and I recognize that really is not, this system doesn't allow that. So, you know, in the past, there have been some nominations that are just so poorly written. Everything's there, but it's so poorly written that you can't really evaluate it. And I guess that's kind of what I was thinking of by insufficient. But if it's that poorly written, then I guess we just go with 0 points, you know.
Okay. So, Mary Beth, I know this isn't where you intended to go with this, and I beg everyone's indulgence with my next comment. That is, what if you know something about someone, and I'm talking about like DEI issues, bullying, harassment, stuff like that. Have we done any kind of detective work in advance to know that we're not voting someone into a position who has been a bully in the past, or sexually harassed their graduate students or something like that? And again, if that's a totally inappropriate subject, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of what's going on in the world today.
I was thinking of asking this question: how much of a hearsay is allowed in the decision making? So maybe just the dossier we get to see all the documents put together, but maybe they are our colleague, and they are actually our colleagues and friends. And so we may know, but how much of a hearsay is allowed in the decision making?
That's a beautiful way to put it. Susan, Lauren, any thoughts, or some of our other past presidents? What do you think?
Well, just as a quick FYI, so the boards passed the diversity, equity, inclusion recommendations February 28th, actually, and the DEI committee is starting to work on those. The number one priority is professional conduct and anti-harassment policy development. So we have not started the actual work of developing those processes and those policies yet. So I understand what you're saying, April. I think it's a really tricky situation, especially if it's hearsay. There's certainly no database, and especially if somebody hasn't been maybe given their fair due process, if that's going to be a situation. But then again, everybody knows personal situations. So I'm not sure if I have an answer either. But I think that could be part of the conversations if you choose to do those.
Thanks. Vera?
Thank you. Thank you, April. That's a very important question, because one of the things when we select the fellows is the integrity of the person and the scientific integrity, and also the other issues. So it's a very, very important discussion which we are having. I think it's generally, most of the people who are nominating a person would have thought about it, and also the people who are writing the references would have thought about it. But I think it's not always possible to know those situations. And as a committee or as a tri-societies, we also do not have a formal process to analyze or determine those, rather than just depending upon the nominator and the reference letters. So it is possible that as a committee member, we can go back and ask the nominator one or two questions related to that. I think that's probably allowed, just as a process of before we evaluate. So in the meantime, when we are developing these policies, to have a statement included in the nomination process that you adhere to those diversity, DEI, gender, any other harassment issues, we should ask the nominator to look into that, or at least acknowledge that he has done his due diligence before nominating. So until that is done, maybe the chair can make a informal conversation with the nominator to determine if something like that shows up, then it'll be our responsibility as a chair to bring it up to the members of this committee. Hope that makes sense.
I guess.
Yes, and I've made a note for a consideration of that part of the conversation when we form the ethics committee.
Excellent. Thanks.
April, let me respond too. I think it's an important question. As the chair of this committee for ASA, if someone in the committee knows something that I should be made aware of, please let me know.
Me too.
I'm also very sensitive to what Susan said. Hearsay is, we need to have, you can't simply act on hearsay alone.
Exactly.
But awareness, being aware of situations might allow us to explore some things. Hopefully within a year, we can set up a system like AAAS has instituted this year. I'm just now nominating some colleagues for that fellowship award. And they've got a new affidavit that all 3 letter writers have to fill out, speaking to the scientific integrity and ethical behavior. And they have to sign off on it and verifying that, to the best of your knowledge, that there are none of these issues out there. So I think in a year we'll be in a better spot, I think, April, to deal with this. And I think what AAAS is doing is probably something we could consider as a model, but maybe we could improve it. But certainly this year, since we don't have anything in place formally, please, there's something that I should be aware of as chair of ASA in this regard. Please contact me. We'll have a conversation about it and go from there.
Thanks. That's really helpful, Jeff. And again, to all of my soils committee members, please do feel free to reach out to me if you have any concerns or questions, and I'll try to follow up. But yes, I like that idea of being able to incorporate new practices. One other question I had, and this goes back to something, again, Mary Beth mentioned, and also Lauren doing such a nice job on these slides, making sure that we didn't see last year's nominees. Do we need to say something out loud about confidentiality? Are all of these names and applications confidential, or is this are we allowed to talk to people about it?
I will say in the past, we've tried to maintain the confidentiality of the nominations, specifically because I know that there is a lot of nominations that are carried over from year to year. And I was going to also note that part of the reason that we have the 2-round ranking system is because there is at some point some kind of illicit bias, right? These are members of the societies that have been members for many, many years and have reached such a level of their professional career that they are being nominated for this award for a reason. So that is also part of the reason that the ranking system is set up the way it is, to help try to alleviate some of that bias in the second round, where I had noted that your top selections may not make it on because they might not have the strongest nomination, but at the same time, they have received the most points cumulatively from the committee itself. So that is the reason that they had been selected to move on to the second round. So that is honestly the biggest reason to have the 2-round system, is to try to alleviate some of that potential bias that individuals on the voting committee might have.
And one other thing, I think because these are not self-nominations, that I think we make the assumption that the nominees are aware, because they do have to gather so much information. But because I think they're not directly submitting it, that's another reason for confidentiality. Now, certainly that could be some conversation to be had, and maybe we want to do something so that we know that they're aware of it. But so that's why we worked, like Lauren worked this time to hide the names of last year.
And I think I will note, I think reaching out to the nominators wouldn't be like a hard no from the societies, but I would be careful to consider what has been entered into the nomination form is what is expected to be judged, if that makes sense. I would take the nomination form at face value, because that is where the points are coming from, where the scores, the allotments, the expectation that will be the nomination and what's going to be judged.
I think Bara had his hand up first.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Susan.
Oh, yeah.
I think my question was related to the process again. I think Jeff has mentioned that the next year process, there will be an ethical statement required. But is there a flexibility in this round? Of course, I understand the confidentiality issue. Once the final final slate is ready, before it is approved by the president of the society, is it okay, or is it possible to reach out to the nominator to ask that specific question about ethical behavior and other associated items? Can the chair of the committee do that?
My sense, just from working with the committees as much as I have over the years, is that when processes for the fellows are changed, that usually comes from the committee to the board. The board tends to want to do more review with the fellows nominations, but I think at least it should be a recommendation from the fellows committee. That would be my sense. Now, Bara, you might want to connect with the other leaders of CSSA to see what their sense is.
That is correct, Susan. That's the process for the next year, to actually include a formal statement for the nominator to sign off. But I'm talking about this round. Is it possible, or is it allowed for the chair of the committee to reach out to the nominator to ask, just informally ask a question related to ethics or not?
Right, and
Just
that's
to
what I
include,
was
to
wondering.
actually have a statement, to include the statement in the nomination process that will have to come from the committee and the policy changes, and it has to be included in. So that is okay. That's for the next year next year round. But for this year, is it allowed or not?
It could be done. I think if it's a process of the committee.
Sure. Thank you. That helps. And of course, confidentiality is key here. Of course, we wouldn't say that he or she is selected. It will just say that just asking a question. To your knowledge, are you aware of any of those issues with the candidate? Thank you.
Yep. All right, Durga.
Yes, thank you, Susan. I'm in Social Science Society of America, committee, and when you talk about ethics or professional conduct for the applications or candidates, I was thinking about those diverse international settings. Applicants coming from many different countries and international environment. What would be the best way, or how it will be possible, to really hunt down to those ethical behaviors or professional misconducts or anything internationally, if they have different standards or, reporting systems or something like that. So that's just, I was thinking, how complex this issue of professional conduct or validation would be in an international environment like this.
Absolutely. And that'll be something for the ethics committee to talk through.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly.
This is a very, very general question, but it came to mind when you were talking about, or I think Lauren was mentioning, that there are sometimes people stay in the process for a while. And I wonder if you could comment on that a little bit more. I mean, I knew that already just based on my experience in the societies. I've heard that so many times, but is that consistent across the different societies? And is there a time frame that people stay in the process? Is there any point at which they're removed from the process?
Yes, so there is a cutoff for reusing a nomination, and that is 3 years is our max for carryover. Some awards are only 1 or 2, specifically usually scholarships, because that changes so much for students year to year. But for fellows specifically, it is 3 years that a nomination can be reused moving forward before it needs to be reinitiated either by a new person or a complete new nomination for that year. I can't tell you the turnaround. I don't know that, honestly, we have the data to see how many nominations it took for someone to get selected. I don't know that we've ever used that as a tracking device, or tracking data, I should say.
So with those 3 years, is it the exact same nomination package, or does it include different references, or?
That is at the hands of the nominator. So one nominator can carry that nomination over for 3 years if that individual does not get selected. They are able to change anything and everything in that nomination, including reference writers, any of the fields. And again, where we've been making changes to the nomination form for the last 2 years with point validation, the career role sections, those things have been evolving thoroughly over the last few years. That nomination form has had to change regardless of what was carried over from the year before, just because of the different sections. So it is possible that there's some information that is 3 years old in those nominations.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that, does that?
Yes, that helps a lot. I mean, it's just a very general question.
Yeah.
And thank you, Vera. I see what you posted in the chat.
Couple of things in the chat. It seems says, while we will be working with the face information of the dossier, can chair confirm or validate some information and provide to the members? And I think, Lauren, when nominations are entered into the system, there are some things that are validated. If they're a member, Do they meet the years of membership requirements? The things that our database will know.
Yes.
But
So
in terms of the other information that they have provided in the nomination, like they worked at the University of Wisconsin-Madison for 10 years. I had to say that one. You know, it's not, the system's not going to check that one.
correct. So the eligibility requirements that are listed in the nomination form itself are what the system checks against. And that is the years of membership, the societies of membership, and then also those requirements for, say, the reference writers, etc. The nominees can't be on the board, those kind of eligibility specific requirements. Outside of that, the nomination form does not validate against any of the information that's provided except for that points value for the career roles specifically.
And Barbara had noted that in my experience serving on this committee in the past, it's really important to evaluate just on what was submitted. Otherwise, it can bring in personal bias, which I think is what we talked about earlier.
Yes.
And then, yeah, the 3 years. Those are all the questions that I have in the chat.
Perfect.
Yeah. Kelly,
And
do you
that
still have a question? Okay.
That is something that has been evolving over the years as well, with the bias and the knowledge of outside of the form itself and how much of that is able to be brought in. So I would say 2 years ago when I first got trained on the awards program that my answer was exclusively only judge on the nomination and try to remove any bias as possible. But I understand situationally, especially with the diversity and inclusion acts that we're trying to move forward with, that should be a consideration this year. It should have been in previous years as well, but
We keep moving forward.
yes. Okay, is there any other questions based on voting, moving forward in the rounds or anything like that anyone has process-wise that I can help with? Okay, I'm available. Like I said, I will be sharing this slide deck. I'm available. I've included my email on here as well, the direct links. The communications will be coming from the societies here next week. And I think if that's it, I will let us out a little early.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lauren.
Yes, thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.